Hey, good Tuesday evening, everyone. Welcome to the Illinois Freedom Caucus Tuesday night roundtable and town hall discussion as we dive into the two hottest subjects in Springfield and Illinois. As we get started here tonight, I am so happy to be joined with the chairman of the Illinois Freedom Caucus, Chris Miller, the chairman of the Senate Illinois Freedom Caucus, Andrew Chesney, and our beloved state director, Colin Mosley. Welcome, gentlemen, to the program this evening. I hope you're all doing well. Rain started earlier today. Maybe the drought will be over. I mean, we have like about 10 days worth of rain forecast here. We're in a deep drought in central Illinois. Chris, I know you're not far from that. You're in the middle of that.
No, we are. And we were, it makes everything pretty ugly and muddy on the farm, but it's much needed. I know that sources say that we're down 15 to 18 inches of moisture here, at least in our general area, and would be devastating to go into this planting season if we don't recharge the soil somewhat.
Right, exactly. And Senator Chesney, I don't know, you're way up there in the Northland. You probably got about 3 feet of snow on the ground. But I don't know, did you have much? Were you in that drought last summer that hit us late fall? What's it like in your neighborhood?
I think everybody's reasonably happy. I don't know that we had any strong pushback weather related. Didn't seem to be a ton of storms and activity, but all in all, pretty good from what I recall. But I don't watch it as closely as Chairman Miller does, and certainly in his line of work. But I heard it was great harvest, and things are great up here.
Excellent. Well, and Director Mosley, there is no drought when it comes to bad ideas out of Springfield. It is like a floodgates are open of bad ideas.
Well, that's right. That's right. I always the governor and comptroller talk about the rainy day fund. Well, it's pouring here in Illinois. It's storming.
Yes, and I did the calculation, I forgot now, but the rainy day fund would last like about 12 minutes or something. I mean, it doesn't seem like it was very much, but it's something they want to brag about, how they have bolstered those reserves. I don't know. It just doesn't.
They do say that rain brings change. And so I'm just hoping that it's pouring down rain in about the Macomb, Fulton County, Hancock County area right now.
Exactly. Well, let's get into it, gentlemen. As we talk about the hottest subject in the state of Illinois right now is what's going to happen with the Bears. Has the governor already fumbled that situation, or is he fumbling as we speak? I know there was a House committee hearing last Thursday morning. They explored the virtues or the lack thereof of HB 910, which I believe was called the Mega Projects bill. I don't know. I'm just going to throw this open to Senator Chesney or Representative Leader Chairman Miller. Anybody want to talk about the Mega Projects bill, HB 910, kind of what's going on with the Bears?
Well, I think it's interesting that the Democrats always talk about fighting for working families, but they spend overtime talking about mega projects. So I guess what comes out of their mouth seems to contradict one another often. Here's the deal from my position is, I want the Bears to stay in Illinois, but only if it's a good deal for the taxpayers. But I think it's also appropriate to say what's in it for the people we represent. Our people want property tax relief too, as you know. I mean, property taxes are the highest in the country, and so the Democrats are scrambling trying to cut a deal for the Bears. And I would just pose a very simple question to the Democrat majority is, what are they doing for the people we represent? Or what are they doing for the everyday people that we represent? They're spending overtime trying to help billionaires and wealthy corporations, while in virtually all other cases, just sticking up everyday people with the bill. So it's got to be a good deal for the taxpayers, but included in that also has to be some relief for the people that we represent.
Right, exactly. Well, it's interesting. I'm getting email here. So I'm 3.5 hours plus or minus south of the city, south of Arlington Heights. I'm getting email in opposition to the Bears moving to Arlington Heights because of the property tax situation. And I guess it's really a foregone conclusion. They're leaving the city, right? They're leaving the city. They're going to go somewhere. It's either going to be this Arlington Heights or over to Hammond, Indiana. And so I think it's going to be interesting. But the email that I'm getting is all in opposition to it coming to Arlington Heights just because of the property tax situation.
I think one of the bigger questions is to ask why we're even having this conversation, because the only reason why we're talking about this now is because of the Democrats' negligence in trying to put a deal together that was palatable to them, and now they're desperate because their solution for everything has always been more taxes, more borrowing, more spending, and more regulation. And life gets better at all points of the compass from Illinois, and just moving across to Indiana, just a few miles from where Soldier Field is now. The economic opportunity is astounding when you compare the template to Illinois, and it's all the result of bad public policy. And I don't blame the bears at all for looking at this, but if they're going to give tax relief to the multi-billion-dollar corporation and entity, I would say that the citizens in Illinois deserve the same treatment. Property taxes are capped at 1% in Indiana, and that would be a great place to start here in the state of Illinois, a cap on property taxes of 1%.
Right. So, Senator Chesney, if they move to Arlington Heights, the estimate's about $210 million in real estate taxes. But if they move to Indiana, there's zero real estate taxes because the state of Indiana, the legislation that they passed and signed into law late last week, they would own the stadium and it would be financed in a completely different way. How do you see it there from your end?
Well, what I see is Indiana is able to pass an agreement with unanimous agreement in both legislatures because they have property tax caps for everyday people. And so everyday people look at their property tax bills in Indiana and it's very reasonable. And they're able to reach agreement because of that reasonability. The issue that we have in Illinois is the Democrats are likely to pass some property tax abatement, freeze, reallocation that is going to significantly lower their property tax liability, perhaps at zero, maybe it's close to zero or effectively zero, or maybe it's a few $1 million, but relative to the cost of the building, it's not much. However, everyday people are going to still get screwed. And so we're just saying, where's the relief for us? Us meaning our constituencies. So I think that's really, I think the most revealing part of this is where the priorities lie in the Democrat majorities. They are spending overtime trying to cut a property tax deal for a rich corporation and doing nothing in Harvey, where their property tax rates are through the roof, doing nothing in Rockford, which is where I represent, highest property tax rates in our region, through the roof. And they're doing nothing in Southern Illinois, same problem. And so, yeah, they'll cut a deal. It's just going to screw everybody else.
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean, so they're also, to your point, I mean, they're freezing the value of the property at pre-development levels.
That's right.
So a small business in Central or Southern or anywhere else, let's say, it's impossible today for a mom and pop to pop up a building and operate. And what's frustrating about this is, mom and pop couldn't go spring up a little cafe in the middle of a town somewhere without their property taxes skyrocketing to post-development rates. But the Chicago Bears, $1 billion corporation, is going to get their piece of land frozen at what it's worth, undeveloped. That's what's backwards about this. And I get it, right? The Chicago Bears are $1 billion jobs, revenue, but don't tell me we couldn't do something for small business too as part of this to make it, because right now it continues the narrative in Illinois that we don't care about the middle class. We don't care about small businesses. Unless you're a billionaire corporation, we're not going to help you. That's what this bill says.
Right. Well, I think it's another glaring example of Illinois' misplaced priorities. We spent $500 million on the Chinese Communist battery plant in Goshen. We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars worth of tax credits on the Rivian auto manufacturer there in Bloomington Normal that continues to lose $35,000 to $40,000 for every vehicle that they produce. I mean, it's just the whole Green New Deal fantasy that the governor and most of the majority party want to live in. And it's like, okay, so when it comes time for something that's really important, like this, they don't have any money. They don't have anywhere to go. And it's amazing, right? That how the governor is all about raising taxes until he sees that it's needed to incentivize somebody to stick around. Why can't they see that overtaxation is the problem, and that, trying to alleviate taxes makes it better? I'm just kind of confused about that.
Well, the problem is they live in fantasy land, and in this pretend culture where they live in a non-reality when they think men can be women and men can nurse a baby, and they don't know the difference between a man and a woman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The hits go on and on. And as you mentioned, the green fantasy, they live in a pretend culture where they think that they can actually by magic produce energy to fill our grid, and all it is it's industrial suicide is what they're doing with all the fantasies that they live in, is particularly the green scam.
Right.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, let's bring this to a close. Senator Chesney and then Colin, any closing thoughts on this slide before we move to the next one?
You're starting a barber shop and the government wants to give you a deal. They should get a deal if the Bears get a deal. Everyday businesses should be able to get a deal if the Bears get a deal.
Exactly.
And if the everyday businesses can't get a deal, the Bears shouldn't get a deal.
Yep.
That's my view.
Something tells me that the new dome is not going to run solar panels and windmills.
Well put, Colin.
Hey, maybe they should tell the Bears to bring their own power.
There you go. There you go.
All right. So the next hottest subject in Illinois is the primary. We're just 2 weeks out. Hottest race in Illinois is over in the 94th House. Josh Higgins is taking on multi-term incumbent Noreen Hammond. Gentlemen, I'm just going to throw this open about these two different races. One all the way extreme southern Illinois, Harold Visser in the 118th. That's an open seat. Anyhow, Chris or Andrew, whoever wants to start this conversation up.
You can prime the pump, Andrew.
Well, generally, when I'll speak for the Higgins race. So the Higgins race is, of course, against 16-year incumbent Noreen Hammond. And I can generally tell you, here's the reason you get primaries. You get primaries when you campaign in your very first race, and that doesn't match your voting record. So when you're out there campaigning your very first time and you're talking about taking on the fight in Springfield and your conservative values and how you're going to have everybody's back, and when that voting record doesn't match the first way you campaign, people start to get upset. And when you take a look at the voting record, not nothing personal, but just the voting record does not reflect the district. And when the voting record does not reflect the district, and it's different of what you originally said, people have an issue with that. And I think that's what you're seeing in the 94th House race is you have a responsibility as an elected official to not only represent your district, but you can talk tough in your district, which is fine, but just make sure that the votes follow that toughness. And I would argue that Noreen Hammond says one thing in her district and comes to Springfield and does something different, which is why you're seeing the opposition and somebody wanting to take a shot at this race, because this doesn't end. I mean, I hope Josh Higgins wins. I think he's probably going to win. But if he's not successful, Noreen Hammond gets a primary in 2 more years. This doesn't stop because her voting record does not reflect the district. And that's the reason that you're seeing Josh Higgins step into the race. And that's like while you're likely to see Josh Higgins win the race.
Yeah. Let's go to Chairman Miller and then to Colin to close out the thoughts on this slide.
No, that's an excellent point that you bring up there, Senator Chesney, Leader Chesney, because I know that we're pretty cautious about entering into the primary scene just because. But I thought that this was a no-brainer when we vetted Josh Higgins and when we vetted Harold Visser. We thought we felt like that they were Freedom Caucus type men with a backbone to stand up against the sewer that we see in establishment Springfield, and because of that, we drove to deep southern Illinois a few weeks ago and endorsed Harold Visser for that race. I think it's, what is it, a 2 or 3 way race, Colin? 3-way race, and so we're confident that these guys will vote according to our Constitution and according to our Republican Party platform and the principles that we stand on for individual liberty and limited government, the rule of law, fiscal responsibility, fair markets, the sanctity of life, and peace through strength. Those are all ideals that we have complete confidence in, that these men will stand upon the solid rock of those fundamental foundational principles.
Right, exactly. Director Collin, any closing thoughts here as we wind this down?
My closing thoughts on this slide are, you hear a lot about why are Republicans fighting Republicans. You hear a lot of complaints about primary elections. And the reason behind this is simple, is we cannot beat the Democrats until our team is sharp and organized and ready. We're approaching March Madness. You're not going to see many champion basketball teams playing their 11, 12, and 13 and 14 man in their starting lineup, because that's just not how it works. And politics is the same. We have got to make sure that people in our party are rock solid. We're going to stand up and fight. We have no room for weakness. We have no room for frauds. We have no room for sellouts. And that's what this is about. And the people in the Freedom Caucus and the people we are supporting are going to fire the frauds and make sure that we have rock solid conservative fighters after March 17th.
Yep. There you have it. Gentlemen, any closing thoughts before we close this out for the evening? Colin, you can speak to this, please.
Yeah. Hey, this is where you'll find us. Follow our Substack, check out our website, social media. We're producing content all the time. We're in session, election season. So if you would just, always like, share, subscribe to our content. We're trying to do the best we can to inform you guys of what's going on in your state government.
Exactly. And gentlemen, unless there's anything else, we'll say good evening. Yeah.
I have one other thing, is that on March the 14th, I know that myself and Congresswoman Miller and Leader Vice Chairman Blaine Willauer, at least us three, are going to be in the 94th District doing a victory tour, encouraging people to get out to vote. And so if you want to come and join us there, I'm sure there'll be more information as we go along to the times and the places that we're going to be throughout the 94th District. But it's going to be a great day and a great event.
Yeah. 1 week from this Saturday on the 14th in West Central Illinois. So, yep. Senator Chesney, any closing thoughts? And then we're going to wrap up for the evening.
I just appreciate everybody's time. We want to make sure that what we tell you matches our voting record, and we want to elect people that will do the same in Springfield. And it's nothing more simple than that. It's not personal. We just want voting records to match what they talk, how they talk. That's all.
Exactly. We got 94% with us here today.
92%.
92%.
92%. Thank you for noticing that there, Chairman Leader Miller. Well, that's not hard to. It's hard to get that record. It's hard to get that record. It's hard to maintain that. Yeah. So anyhow, yeah. All right. With that, Director Mosley, if you'll close us out for the evening, we'll say good evening, and we'll talk to you real soon.